So I'll just start for the with the question that I think it's the most suitable for my country, which is how was to you the experience of shooting in Portugal for the Rushy House? What did you like the country? Have you ever returned after that? What were your thoughts on Portugal?
I haven't returned, not because I didn't want to though. We've often talked about it.
Yeah.
We enjoyed our time there very much. Mind you, at the time it was a hell of a contrast to Russia, where we'd been for a while, and to come and to the land of plenty, really good wine and really good food after none of that in Russia. So that might have coloured our experience. No, but we enjoyed it, particularly the old town, which is where we spent a lot of time. So it was good. One thing I was surprised at, I went to see where some of your explorers headed out from to discover the world, and to see that it was just a concrete knob in the water was a little disappointing, I would have thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were expecting a much more epic monument to our discoverers. But that's a fascinating monument because it's standing on water, and it's been there. It survived an earthquake, and it's really amazing. And did you thought that the Portuguese people love to have such stars and such a production in the country, or were they a little hostile? How was the people?
It was fine. Everybody was good to us.
Yeah.
It was a little difficult to get around in some of the narrow streets if we wanted to move the crew quickly.
Yeah.
But what was there more than made up for that inconvenience. No, it was good. It was a very good experience.
Yeah, I think that if you ever return to Portugal, you're going to find out that those difficult streets are just as the same as in the early 90s. So be careful with that. I would like to ask, what are your thoughts in the movie itself? Because it was the first movie of yours that I have watched. And I was really surprised because it has a tone and an atmosphere that I think not so many John le Carré adaptations have. And the chemistry between the two protagonists is really marvelous. And I'd just like to ask, more than 20 years on the making of the film, what are your thoughts on it?
It's pretty good. It stands up pretty well. It was a dream cast.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to get that right, and get a lot of those people at the peak of their powers. That helped a lot, and even in the smaller parts, we had exceptionally good actors. There was one day I was on a set where the spies were monitoring everything, and the Americans and the English were all together in the room monitoring what was going on, so-called Russia, and I was grumbling about something that I had particularly asked for to be on that set that I wanted to use in some way. And when I don't get the things that I think are important, I get a little gnarly. And my DOP, director of photography, and came up and he said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "Forget it, look around. It doesn't get any better than this."
And he was right.
I looked around the room full of actors. I said, well, okay, all right. Yeah, all of that. I mean, in every part, we had. You couldn't have cast it better. So from that point of view, and then just where we were and the experiences we had and the location, all of that, or all our locations, it was just great.
Yeah.
Not saying it was without difficulty. I mean, Russia was with a lot of difficulty because we had to, in fact, bring in all our own food and water, certainly for the first 2 meals of the day, because of the shortages that were there at that time.
Yeah.
So, it had difficulty, and but on the other hand, I'm told, was smiled on by Gorbachev as one of the initial experiments of, our kind of filmmaking in the country.
Yeah, and in the post Cold War world.
Yeah, and that was all happening, and Russia was coming apart as we were setting up. Well, not Russia, the USSR was, when we were setting up to do the filming. So it was an extraordinary time to be there, but we were blessed because the word went out that they had to cooperate with us no matter what, and they did. So, that helped a lot.
And did you knew that if the Russian people and Gorbachev after the production, if they saw the movie and if they give you their opinion of it, they were favorable of the use that you made of the country?
Yeah, I got that impression loud and clear, and I went back as the head of the jury, the Moscow Film Festival, 20 years later, and they were still talking about it, and some of the production people involved, who were all Mikhalkov's people, they were making speeches about how we changed the way things were done and how we helped the film economy in the country by, other productions coming to the country, and they knew how to service those productions, etc. But there was the knock-on effect from that, into their own productions. So it was nice to hear, for sure.
You were saying that the production of the Russian House had many difficulties, and there are much of your productions that had many difficulties, and one of them that I watched recently was IQ. And I have to say, despite all the problems, I think it's a movie that stands really well. I was really surprised by it. It's just a sweet movie. Based on such a bizarre premise, but it works. I mean, it could be better, of course, but I was surprised that the movie had moments that work really well. And more than 25 years after the premiere of the movie, how different was your vision from the final movie? What specific things did you not wanted in the film that came about to be in the final product?
That's always a very hard question to answer, because when you're missing the things you want, you can't let that affect what you do. So you have to tailor everything to what you do have and get the maximum out of that. And then once you start doing that, of course, you've got all the logic and discipline of what you're doing in the film has to be consistent. So you couldn't, and if I had any one of those things now, I wouldn't be able to put it in that film. So you make a different film. It was, I had a slightly different cast for all the scientists in mind. But I thought the people who did it did a fantastic job, and and they were all quite disparate in character. And so, you develop the interaction between them and the fun that they bring to the film. So you can't anymore say, well, the others would have done it better. They just would have done it differently, that's all. And there was a bit of rewriting going on when we were in production and all of that, which made some things could have affected it adversely. But no, I was pretty happy with what we ended up with. There were a couple of other things going on in the background that we could have done without, but it doesn't matter. The trick is not to let any of that affect what you're doing.
And the trick is to not pass to the viewer the tough experience that was the shooting, right? And I think the movie don't pass that message. I think the movie you made a very good job. And then I read somewhere that
I'd still be shooting until I got.
Until today. Well, you couldn't have Walter Matthau for now, but but that's another story. And then you were assigned to do the reshoots of Fierce Creatures. I was thinking about that movie because John Cleese in your mind was to play one of Einstein's friends in the IQ. What was the specific scenes that you have to carry about in Fierce Creatures? What was the state of the movie when you came into the project?
When I came in, it was a mess. It suffered from the fact that there were too many directors. I felt sorry for the original director, but it seems to me that everybody was trying to direct. The actors were, and the producers were, and everybody was having their say. Partly because of the success of the first one.
Fish Called Wanda, yeah.
But I think what they were attempting to do in some way was what was causing the problem. And when I saw it, I was quite shocked. So the first thing I did when I came in was took all the material and talking to John, of course, and the producer, saying, look, this has to go, that has to go, that doesn't work. Now, let's first of all re-edit what's reasonably good, because it was edited at a much too leisurely a pace.
Yeah.
So I sat down and tightened all that up, and that made a huge difference. And then in doing that, I was able to say, you need, a close-up of somebody in here and here. You need somebody else in here, just to get their personalities through, so that you start to relate to them as well. Because what makes those successful are the interplay between all the characters, not just one.
Yeah.
And so I identified what we would have to shoot and drop in to the existing material, and then I suggested that we needed a scene where we see what they all do and what their jobs were and all of that, which resulted in that pretty funny scene behind the cages.
Oh, yeah.
So that it gives you a group thing and all that sort of stuff, and you kind of know where different people are coming from.
Yeah.
Then John, had ideas for the beginning. I did keep saying you need a scene at the beginning, the same way you had in the earlier film, Fish Called Wanda, where you set everybody up.
Yeah.
But you weren't just setting everybody up, you were setting the tone because if you go into the film, this was one of the problems we saw. If you go into the film and then the first time you see John Cleese, you know, he's wanting to get rid of all the sweet animals and get bad animals, you know,
Yeah.
dangerous animals. Well, with his kind of humour, you're not sure whether that character is serious, you know. I mean, I know the character is serious, but whether he's meant to be funny to us.
Yeah.
So it gets very itchy, scratchy.
Yeah.
And I had hoped they would write something like that. They didn't. They went another route. And in testing, it kind of showed that I was right. So what we then did was we trimmed out a lot of the stuff at the beginning and almost went straight to that, so that you were fronted with it straight away, and you go, oh well, yeah, it's got to be funny. You weren't misled by anything that went before it. And then, you know, the whole last 35 minutes of the film is a complete rewrite and reshoot. And so, and again, there was a couple of things, and certainly after the first time we tested it, I thought it wasn't going so well. The beginning wasn't, and B, as we finished off, it wasn't. And I made a whole lot of recommendations, and we recut very quickly the way I had thought it should go in the first place. And then it went through the roof in testing. And I suggested a couple of things that they should have kept in and kept going. But they got a little bit overconfident from that test and went back, put a few things back in, which personally I didn't think they should have. So, but it's a much funnier film in spots than it was.
I thought it has really funny moments. I think that joke that is repeated several times of John Cleese being a ladies' man, it works really well. I laugh out loud, but I think that there's a kind of a shift in the character between the guy who wants the fierce creatures and then the guy who turns to somebody else. And I thought that wasn't working at the best of the idea. I don't know if that was one of the things that they put back that you were against. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all a bit complicated. I mean, I do. The less said about that, the better.
Okay. And speaking of comedies, 2 nights ago I watched Roxanne, which I think it's your best comedy. It's my humble opinion. And what was when were you confronted with this idea of remaking Cyrano de Bergerac?
And Steve Martin was doing it.
Yeah.
I have been trying to do. In fact, I've been up for a couple of comedies.
Yeah.
But the powers that be, or the people with the money, couldn't see any evidence of
Your skill to, yeah.
And but Steve Martin and Dan Melnick did not want to go to a comedy director, somebody who's only done comedy, because they knew there were more deeper moments to be plumbed here and there, not too much.
It's not a straightforward comedy. It has some dramatic moments in the middle, yeah.
So they wanted, somebody who thought about film in a different way. One of my agents at the time, Martha Luttrell, was going. She'd been also trying to help me get a comedy, and so they put me together with Dan and Steve, and they liked, believe it or not, they liked Plenty an awful lot. So they picked me on Plenty, which is not a laugh a minute. So anyway, I went to the meeting, and I thought, I said, okay, after we'd had a few chats, I said, well, I'd like to talk about the script. I said, for me, the first time I laughed out loud was page 66, and here's what the scene was. And I said, that's way too long to get a big belly laugh. There might have been other things, certainly the way Steve would do something. But it was, and I said, so I think we've got to fix all that, you know, and bring that as early into the movie as we can, but we've got to fix things on the way. And so we then set about talking about that, but that was the moment they decided that I should do the film. But it's always, that's the moment that could lose you the film. You know, if they did agree with you, well, you'd be out the door pretty quick. You know, so it was a chance I took, but no, we had a fantastic experience, and Steve is very unique and incredible with his comedy, and we worked on the script a lot actually, 21 different drafts, polishes, you know, not all total drafts, but you know, you have jokes and lots of alternate jokes because you never quite know what's going to be funny. Although I was shooting it in a way that I did know what was going to be funny. But Steve kept saying, "Oh, I forget you think you know what's going to be funny," and I went, "Well, let's make it funny." So it was a good collaboration between all of us. And you know, and the great atmosphere when we're shooting it. It was terrific.
I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but contrasting with other film experience that you have, you saying that it was a really happy experience is not the thing that happens often in your filmography. Yes, because many of your movies have had several problems in the middle of production.
True, but you know, like Last Orders, for instance, you know, which was a great experience from making the film. It was not a great experience because the money that was supposed to be coming kept not coming, you know, so you have those kind of problems. But, you know, it's an irritant on the side. You can't let it affect what you're doing. It's an irritant that could have crushed the whole project, you know, but you keep to the side, you know, and what the actors are doing and what you're doing with them, and if you're achieving the vision that you have, then that overrides everything. Yeah, you could do without some other stuff, but you know.
I found out a little interview that you gave to Rolling Stone in the mid-80s after the release of Barbarossa, and you said that, let me just check here the quote, it said that comparing to Australia and Australian cinema, in Hollywood you spend more time making deals than you do making the films. And this was in the 80s. I think, I don't know if today it's much more difficult now.
Yeah, it's worse. Way worse.
Yeah.
Those days look like the golden days.
I noticed that in your Instagram it's like it's a post with some months, but you were looking for locations and financing for King of Grapes. How is that now?
It's gone. That was a co-production between China and Australia, and I wrote the screenplay with Judy Morris, who wrote the screenplay for Eye of the Storm. And it was an allegory for China and Australia trying to get together, and it was an adult romance of two people who used to write to one another when they were in school, as a kind of school exercise.
Yeah.
Got very friendly for many years through correspondence, and then kind of, this is the backstory, but then they drifted apart as people do, but found themselves in the same business of making wine, albeit at different ends of the world. And they were coming together to meet in the flesh for the first time ever. And then he goes to her vineyard, and then later on she comes to his kind of thing. And it's got a lot of humour, a hell of a lot of heart, and it's a beautiful film. And then the distributors suddenly decided that they wanted to make a film with fresh young meat, as they called it. And I said, you can't seriously be saying that. So it died.
There's no possibility of resurrection of that project because the idea is quite good.
You know, the distributor, combined with a lot of other distributors, I think 5 distributors merged or something. And, you know, they were putting in a fair amount of money. The problem is they're not always the best people to decide on the content.
Yes.
And if you see the success of some other films, outside films, you know that they're misjudging their audience to a certain extent, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that. If they suddenly decide they don't want to be involved, I've still got the script in my power. But, you know, censorship things were changing a little at the time, and there was a whole lot of other stuff, and in truth I don't really know. They sent me a treatment that they wanted me to stay involved with them and help with the script and eventually shoot it, but it wasn't the film that I wanted to make, but also it was quite it wasn't the film they said they wanted to make either, which was rather strange. Anyway, it unfortunately didn't happen.
I'm going to make it's not a tough question. I mean, in a certain way, is a tough question. Do you think that if you collect all the projects that weren't possible to make, would you have more than the projects that succeeded and were ahead and were released?
Yes, a lot more. You know, I was doing Don Quixote with John Cleese and Ron Williams. We had all the crew, we had all the locations, we had all the major crew, 4 of whom were Academy Award winners. We were top of the line going into that, and the company that had that were suddenly balking at the budget because in their infancy, they made 2 other films. One was on the guy that ran Hustler. I can't remember what the other one was, but unfortunately, both of them failed.
The one from the guy from Hustler is People versus Larry Flint.
Yeah. When I say failed, I mean economically.
Yeah. I understood. Yeah.
And The Thin Red Line was with them, and that didn't get made with them, although I see they've got a credit on it, but that got rescued by 20th Century Fox, and we nearly did, but there was a thing about the budget, which we probably could have ended up managing. But I think more importantly, they felt they didn't have, we were about to be in production and we were 8 weeks off shooting, so they felt they didn't have enough time to do whatever studios want to do, you know, and in I was going to say interfering, but in contributing, shall we say.
Yes.
And so but there were a couple other little problems in the people trying to help put it together. Anyway, it died. So, I mean, that's a game changer, that film. If I managed to do that. I was doing shipping news, but there was a whole political thing between John Travolta and his wife and the studio, and the legal case that goes back to the film that the Polish director who now lives in France, he was doing it. Anyway.
Roman Polanski. Are you talking about Roman Polanski?
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a court case from that was affecting our film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just the stories are horrible. But if I'd done that, it would have been quite a different film to the one that was done.
It could have been a good film.
Yeah.
Because the one that was made, my God. Let's not talk more about some sad stuff, because I think now the cinema is...
There's no film I've made that hasn't been difficult to get made.
Yeah.
That's just the circumstances. If you're trying to make intelligent films or not obviously commercial in some cases, it's always going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And that was behind, a lot of it, but none of them were ever easy. But, once you get to making them, they apart from normal exigencies, it's fine,
Yeah. No, I was just saying that we're not. I didn't want to talk more about problematic stuff, because we are now living in such a troubling era for cinema, because it seems that people don't want to see those films that are not from latex superheroes. I mean, for one hand, I was surprised by the fact that the last Tarantino movie was sort of a hit. Here in Portugal is solding out every screening of it in all the country, but that's Tarantino, and it's really difficult for younger directors to make that kind of success beyond festivals and in the commercial circuit.
Yeah, and he's like a star in his own right.
Yeah.
But also, it's Hollywood. It's looking at a particular glamorous. I haven't seen it yet, unfortunately, but it's looking at a particular glamorous era of Hollywood that a lot of people who like movies respond to. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
It's quite good. It's quite good. I hope that you enjoy it. Let's talk about one of the big topics of the current days in cinema, because the first time that I heard about Iceman was because it was on Netflix. I think it was on Netflix for a period of time. And I would like to know what is your opinion about the Netflix system, and now there are news about the fact that the new Scorsese movie is not going to have a major release, and I would like to know your opinion on the Netflix system.
I didn't know Iceman was on it.
Yeah, it was for a short period of time, but yeah, it was, yeah.
Look, how do I want my films to be seen? I'd rather they're seen on a big screen.
Yeah.
Mind you, a lot of people have big screens now in their houses, and they've got big sound systems. Obviously, not everybody not everyone can afford that, but
Yeah.
that helps a bit. But it's not the same if you see Jimmy Blacksmith on a television set. It isn't the same film that you see. Mr. Tarantino found that out.
Yeah.
But I think with mostly the kind of films I want to do, the only places that really I'm going to get them out is on Netflix or Amazon or HBO. I did Empire Falls for
Yeah, yeah.
HBO, and that was good. That was really a film that they tried to split up into episodes. It's HBO had a saying or a publicity saying is, "Where have all the good movies gone?" And HBO,
Yeah.
and weirdly enough, it's true. Like, so you look at Netflix now. If you're hunting around, I see films and series from Spain, from France, from Italy, from which is the cinema I more respond to.
Yeah.
In Australia, we've always been lucky because we had a channel here called World Movies, and they used to actually subtitle them as well themselves,
Yeah.
which is pretty funny seeing a French film in Australian vernacular. But so we're used to it, but now, I mean, if you're in Los Angeles, for instance, just try and go and see a foreign film in a cinema. There's maybe 2 cinemas showing them,
Yeah.
if that. Bertrand Tavernier, one of the great filmmakers, hardly ever, even before now, hardly ever got into cinemas in America or Australia, and that's just a shame. So to me, Netflix and Amazon, if they know how to go down that road, are making that available, which is fantastic. And I wonder if they're I'm not sure that the average American is sitting down, unless he stumbles across the French film, they're probably not looking for it, right?
Yeah.
But if their friends do and tell them, well, that's better, and it's going to be better for cinema in general.
Yeah.
The medium form series, like say Fargo, or a series that's 6 or 8, but it's intelligent. It's not bad censored television.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So all that I find is encouraging and good. And if one can find the right material for that, because it's you used to if I got an appointment with a studio in the old days, because I worked in the studio system a fair bit.
Yeah.
If off to one side, and I had a good agent who knew how to do that, Sam Caine. But if you got through the door, they would listen to what you had to offer, but what they really wanted to do was show you what they wanted to make. They want a fresh approach on this or that. That is not happening at Netflix or Amazon, right? So with Netflix or Amazon, you've got to go budget, cast, locations, mood boards, even a little mock-up of the film. You've kind of got to go present all that. So they're not in the development business. They're not in the business of finding their own material, and that's a bit disappointing, and it takes a bit of adjustment to.
But now I would like to ask something about Iceman, because as I said to you, I found out on Netflix, and when I saw the movie, I think it's one of your most underrated movies. I think it's a great movie, and I was quite amazed with John Lone. I mean, in not a single moment I thought it was John Lone as Charlie. What are your thoughts on that movie now? It's been 35 years since it was released.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't released, it was turned loose. They didn't support it in any way whatsoever. And they released it when Tarzan the new version of Tarzan came out. you know,
Yeah.
at the same time. You go, why would you do that? Anyway, I like it. It's a good movie. You know, it was fun to explore something like that, and it's one of those wonderful things that are sort of science fiction, only they're not. Like, they're right on the edge. They are, you know, they have found people in the ice fully preserved, etc.
Yeah.
So, you know, all that stuff. And in finding John Wayne, we were running around looking for people who looked like Neanderthals, and like Benny the Jet, and, you know, certain boxers, certain football players and stuff. I think it was the makeup guy said to me, and he's from a very famous makeup family too, lovely bloke. He said, you know, one of our problems will be, and the DOP had the same problem whenever we got anyone in and we tested them, is when you got a brow like that, right?
Yeah.
You can't get the light into the eyes. You can't see the eyes. So John Lone had a flat face, right? A flat,
Yeah.
you know, like the brow back here. Wonderful makeup artist said, well, you know, we can make that. We can make the brow, and like a good set designer, he said, you know, we'll angle them so they look the way they should, but you can get the light in.
Yeah.
So it's actually a bonus to do that, right? And it was the same guy, by the way, who made the nose for
Roxanne. Okay.
what's the
Ah,
his name?
okay.
He
Yeah.
comes from a very famous family. Westmore's that did all that earlier. So you know, what was seemingly a disadvantage was an advantage. And John, with all his ballet training and everything from the Peking Ballet, you know, he
Yeah.
could do a standing jump onto anything. But he was very slim up here. The fact that he had no hair, because, you know, they always show them with hair and everything, which we kind of found out, if you go into the history of it and everything, it's bullshit, you know. You know, they came from the top of Asia when the Cambrian ice fields were, and they came over and they went all the way down America and right down into the, you know, into South America. Anyway, it was all based on fact, the way we did it, but what we did need to do was build him up a bit.
Yeah.
So John did two things. He went into an enormous bodybuilding program
Yes.
to build up his upper half, which included a diet and everything. And at the same time, he kept drinking peach juice every day, and particularly while we were shooting, to lower his voice.
Yeah.
So that he didn't have a high voice. The sad part about it, one of the reasons we picked him was he could appear out of nowhere and jump onto something. And the first time he tried it, he couldn't do it because he suddenly had 25 extra pounds up here. So we had to put trampolines behind it for him to do it anyway. But everything about it was fun for us because I got the leading speech people in America and elsewhere, all with competing ideas, working out how they would talk and what the language would be and how it would sound, and, you know, so it's the fun of it in a way for us was getting as close to the facts as you could possibly get, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's two things in the way we shot it. One was the discipline. We always like to have a discipline and a logic for why we're setting up every shot in a film. And in that film, whenever you're in the back parts of the laboratories, let's call it, it was all designed as a rat's maze. So the scientists themselves were like in a rat's maze. When they were in their control rooms and things, we almost always had shot with them surrounded by their own equipment. They were not free, they were locked in, and there were multi-layers. We used a lot of reflections of them through glass or, you know, behind them in glass, so that just to get a feeling of the multi-layers that they have put on themselves against the simplicity of when we're in the vivarium, the habitat that we created for him. We moved flowingly, and it was more easy and a little more open. And then when we were in his real environment, he was wide-angled, majestic, and super powerful, right? So that photography, that was one thing. And then the other thing was a thing that I like that I've done since Jimmy Blacksmith, subjective, objective, that you are the person, you are looking at the person, and then you suddenly become the person and what they're looking through, and have their experience. But I might pull back and then you see them actually go through it again, so you get the experience as they would have done it, and then you see the experience as you would have observed it. So there's a lot of that going on in it, and again, that's part of the fun that we have.
Speaking of a different subject, you mentioned that when you were assigned to make Roxanne, the people liked plenty. And I thought it's quite interesting to watch the two movies with Meryl Streep, Plenty, and Evil Angels or A Cry in the Dark, not like back to back, but in a double bill with a small break in the middle, just to absorb the first film and then watch the second. And that experience that you say that you like to do since Jimmy Blacksmith, I think it works astonishingly well in A Cry in the Dark, and in Plenty, it's quite. I think I never saw Meryl Streep in such a complex role, because she's not constantly, but her character is breaking down and breaking up several times during the movie. Was that sensation what you wanted to make in the movie, or was not what you intended? How was it?
No, it's exactly what we wanted to do. You know, she comes back from the war having had a heightened experience, but also expecting the world to be better for it.
Yeah.
And she comes back and the world is worse. But in a lot of respects, all of the things she had hoped would have changed haven't. So there are no benefits from having been in this. And in fact, she was stepped back into boredom and being oppressed as a woman and not given any great chances or taken seriously, or and it's just she tries to, wrong word, soldier on through it, and can't, and so it takes its toll all the way through to the end. And the other thing in that film, again, we're doing stuff with the cinematography so that all the statues and columns and all those things that are in England, the rigidity of the society, I tried to shoot everything through that, you know, incorporate that stolidity of the whole, unchangeability of the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was one. The second one was her experience, and I didn't mention this and the other stuff, but sound to me is 50% of a movie, so when those parachutes are coming down at the beginning of the film, we exaggerate the noises of the opening, etc., so that whenever she passes a flapping sheet or she undoes the sheets when she's setting up for a big festival, they all trigger that moment where life was exciting, etc. But it triggers it for us too. It's not something you necessarily observe, but you have feelings and you don't quite know why, and then there are certain repetitive camera movements every time she comes into her apartment, which is, shitty little apartment first, and then a medium one, and then a hip one, and then but every time she comes in, we track her in exactly the same way, and we see her at the window in exactly the same way, so that we're doing the deja vu all the time. Right. Anyway, that's again sort of the discipline for that film and the fun of it.
Yeah, it's one. I would say it is one of your most challenging movies, because of all that themes that you mentioned, and the fact that Meryl Streep as a character like no other. And I don't know if you agree, but it's a movie that I when I finished watching it, I thought I think I have to watch it again to fully understand it, because I'm not saying that all your other movies have to be watched one time. Is not that. Is that the film has so many little things going on that in the first viewing you can't absorb all of them.
Yeah, she's not a sympathetic character either.
Not at all.
I know during the play, because it came from a play that, people were almost shouting out to the original actress in it, "Kill the bitch." I know that when her husband goes to hit her, they go, "Hit the bitch." and that particular actress did a beautiful job, but she played it. There were no fissures into her character at all. It was just stone cold hard, and she didn't play to the audience. She played, or to the other actors. She played to the sort of front side of the stage, and I was very insistent with Meryl that we see in there occasionally. We see those fissures. We get the fact that there's somebody being closed in there. So yeah, it's difficult, and she's not sympathetic, and nobody's particularly nice. So yeah, but that was what it was about. And we're talking about what I do all the time, but just remember, it all comes from good writing.
Yeah.
Like, writing is the basis of it all, and something that's not always understood. In Hollywood, they think you just get writers and you throw them out and you get somebody else and all that. It doesn't speak in a voice when that happens,
Yeah.
And David Hare has a voice. Le Carre has a voice, but add Tom Stoppard and you've got another voice, right? Anyway.
But a good script doesn't mean necessarily a good movie, don't you think?
True. No, that's true.
You
That's
have
true.
to have.
Let us start with a script if you can. Even with a good script, you've got to go into all the possibilities, and you've got to go into all the critical things of it. Plenty. When I first went to meet the playwright, as I sat down, he came to New York, and I met him at the Sherry Netherlands Hotel, and we sat down. Not Westmoreland, by the way, it's Westmore. Just going back, thinking I got that name wrong. We sat at the Sherry Netherlands, and I said, look, before we start the interview, if you like, as to whether I'm suitable to do your play, I don't want to be rude, but I don't want to waste your time either. I liked the play, but there were elements of the play that I had difficulty with, and if you like, we can talk about it, or if you like, we can stop now. It's not that I would understand, but it'd be nice for you to hear me out, and if you disagree with me, well, obviously I'm not right for the movie. And as he said, well, at the end of it, he said, well, actually, I always wanted to fix those things, so let's do it, So we worked on fixing it, right? And, some of the early criticisms was that it was no different from the play, but in actual fact, it was a third of it was quite different, spread throughout the thing. So, yeah, you work on, even when the script's good, you spend a lot of time working on it and nudging it and pushing them into something else. Sometimes it's just so that you get to understand what's underneath it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it identifies a problem, and anyway.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because you were mentioning the way people react to the character in the play, and I was thinking that scenes in The Cry in the Dark or Evil Angels in the court, when a woman shouts out to Meryl Streep, "You're a bitch," and all the kind of spectacle that even the movie itself makes a terrific job to change our perspective on the character, not in such a radical way as all the people, the anonymous people that are commenting through the movie, but Meryl Streep does such a terrific performance that I also was for moments thinking, maybe the baby was not because I didn't know the story. In that movie, there's two things that I like really, really much, and I think that they stood the test of time. The relationship between the media and the power and people, it's quite the same. The fact that anonymous people like to spend their lives with spectacle soap opera of a terrible tragedy. And I just wanted to congratulate you for the movie. I know I'm a little late because the movie is now 30 years old, but that stands really well. And there's another thing in that movie that I like really very much, and I think it's not a constant, but appears several times in your work. That is the relationship between man and God. And here, Sam Neill, there's that moment where Sam Neill says, "I don't know what God wants anymore," and like in Devil's Playground, which is also a terrific movie. And with all this saying, I just wanted to ask, as a man, as a human being, what is your relationship with God? How do you identify with the perspectives of the character of Sam Neill throughout the movie and all that? Sorry, it was a really long prologue for a quick question.
I think if there is a God, he's got a lot to answer for.
Okay.
If I was setting up the world, why would I make people so fucking miserable? People give them miserable circumstances, more what I mean. Why would I let 100,000 people die in a flood in Bangladesh? I don't get it. And all this business of it's his will, it's his wish, he's putting us to the test. So that when we get there, we can adore him for being a wonderful bloke or woman or whatever,
Yeah.
or a trans. You know, I mean, honestly, I get the tenets of religion, right? Not the authoritarian crap that church lays on it, but do unto others, all that stuff. I get that. That's because that's civilization. And I get that throughout all cultures, there's always some higher power that people can turn to or ask things of. And it's kind of like a survival thing, I'm sure. But I never get the whole thing that in good, there's good and evil in everything, right? Excepting Umberto Eco illuminated that for me in a pretty good way in one of the books I read of his, and you know, like fire is wonderful because it cooks for you when you warm, but the same thing can, you know, in the wrong circumstances, kill you, burn you, just maim you. I get that, but why ever have to go through a test, you know?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Anyway, so my relationship, if there is one, is pretty vexed.
Also in this subject, I would like to ask you another question, because if Sam Neill is wanting to know what God wants with all this tragedy, this is just my opinion, but I think that many people face faith as a selfish thing in the way that many people believe in God and think they have faith because they have a good life and they don't have any problems at all. And what amazed me in this movie is the fact that it took a long time to Sam Neill to say, I don't know what God wants anymore, and to have a breakdown. And I just want to, I don't know if you ever thought about the selfish side of faith and belief, but I would like to know if you have any opinion.
Like in American football and sometimes in basketball and stuff, you look and you see a guy, you know, gets a touchdown or something, right? And you'll sometimes see him do that, right? Point up to God. Right? You go, hey mate, what about the other guy who was trying to stop you? He was praying too. I mean, really, come on. Does that guy shit God to death and you don't? No, really.
When you pass away, and I hope that is in 100 years in minimum, I think that you're going to have a great chat with God about all these questions.
Exactly. He's going to see me coming and he's going to go, no way.
Talking about Devil's Playground, I read somewhere that it took 3 years to have the film financed. I don't know if that's accurate or not. 5 years? Okay, 5 years. Okay, sorry. And do you think that it was because it was a difficult theme to deal in a movie that took so long to have it financed?
Yeah.
Because it has
it cost a lot of money, and most of the money's mine. And when it was made, I had to spend that much money again because we actually distributed it ourselves. We hired cinemas and put it in ourselves. So nobody wanted to make it, nobody wanted to release it, etc. But it struck quite a chord with people, not even religious people, just anyone who'd been through puberty, you know. It sort of struck quite a chord with them, you know. And then, oddly enough, I think in one of the gay cinemas in New York, it broke all records. Which was not the intention, but...
Well, Well, it had its audience there. You just have to collect the money and make no questions. What surprised me the most in the movie is the fact that you could connect so well the story of the puberty of the pupils of the juniorate, and then the story of the late puberty of the priests or the brothers. I mean, it's just a kind of approach that since then it was not made a lot more in movies, and in my opinion that's the fact that proof that the movie stands really well, because it's really quite, I wouldn't say shocking, but it's quite realistic, and it has a very realistic tone, and the movie is quite autobiographical, as I know. I don't know if that's right or not.
I always say semi-autobiographical.
Semi-auto. How much of the movie is real?
Most of it. It's pretty real. But I had to backpedal from, if I put in everything, particularly at that time, you wouldn't have believed it at all. You wouldn't be able to believe it. There are just some other more extreme things that happen in a little pressure cooker world like that. The brothers, a couple of the brothers that were at the junior when I was there were from my boarding school. I went to boarding school from the age of 8, and they were alarmed at what was happening. They couldn't believe it, and they kind of knew why. And I had gone to them and said, look, thank God you're here, because you will understand what I'm about to say, but what's happening here is bringing about the most ridiculous things. And because of me not, starting that, they pulled a few people out of the junior and sent them back home. And then I think it was about 2 years later, they moved it and annexed it to an actual school, so that they still lived in the monastery, but they went to an ordinary school during the day and then came back to the monastery, changing that whole system, which was good. But, it was, I just couldn't. There were just some things that would have been hard to take.
And it's really a hard movie sometimes, in a good way. There was one thing about Evil Angels that I forgot to mention, but it seems that after Plenty, you thought that the chemistry between Sam Neill and Meryl Streep on screen have to be more explored. I don't know, because I thought that Evil Angels wouldn't have been made in this way if was Plenty before. I don't know if I'm correct or not.
Well, one thing's for sure, it helped me with Meryl, because I think when she first saw Plenty completed, she came up to me and she sort of said, man, a lot of directors talk about they want to do this and they want to do that, and they don't often get anywhere near it, but you did it and got it all, just the way you said. So that helped our relationship when, to do the next one. In fact, she's one of the reasons I did it, because I kept not wanting to do it, because I was very worried about it being a case, an ongoing case where people's lives were affected. And if you can see it in the film, I wasn't living here during most of that, but I'd come back and we were astounded at the arguments and things that would happen. It was so passionate. So, I was concerned about that. This producer, Verity Lambert, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, but a really good person, and she kind of sent me a script someone had done, and I said, look, I just don't want to. I can't. I don't want to do it. And then she nagged me a couple of times, and then she rang me one night and she said, you know what, you don't want to do it because you don't know how to do it. And I said, okay. So I went away and I sat down and I thought about it, and there was a book that was all about trials and stuff like that. So I took the script that they had, looked at it and went, right. And so then I came up with the idea of the format of the film, the way it now is. So I rang her up and I said, here's how you do it. You do this and this and this and this. Now fuck off. And so about 3 weeks later, she rang me up again and she said, I've got someone to talk to you. And it was Meryl Streep. She said, come on, Fred, we've got to do this film. Well, as soon as she was on, I thought, that's fantastic, because now I've got an ally, that she's going to think, she's going to have the same intelligent approach to this that I want, but also she's probably got a slightly more commercial savvy than I have, so she'll help balance that out. So because I knew I had an ally, I thought, okay, I can have a go.
And also, how did the producers from the men who were responsible for Canon films entered in this project? I was quite surprised. I mean, I know that that Canon films didn't only made the Chuck Norris movies. In fact, they also made a Portuguese movie, financed a Portuguese movie, not tour Portuguese movie. But I was surprised to see their names in the title, the initial credits of the movie. How did they came to the project?
First of all, that's one of the reasons we didn't call it Evil Angels overseas, because we thought Canon presents Evil Angels to give an entirely different vision of what the picture might be. EMI, Verity Lambert was with EMI when EMI were in film, and EMI got taken over by Canon. So she and the project got taken over by Canon. But in actual fact, on the journey, Warner Brothers got involved, and eventually Fox got involved in exhibition. As things went along, Canon got involved in Pathé then got involved in MGM. So by the time we went to Cannes, who the fuck knew who was? It was MGM, Pathé were taking the credit. I don't know. So they came along for the ride in the end. And one good thing about Canon being involved early on was my agent, Sam Cohen, because he had Meryl Streep. He insisted that her money, and therefore he had to insist that my money, went into escrow, so that whatever happened, we weren't going to get shafted. So that was a good thing.
Well, that's quite a story. And talking about, I just have a couple of more questions. The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith was now released on Blu-ray in the UK, and it includes two versions of the movie, your cut and the international cut. I think there are two versions of the film: the full length version and a version that has less 15 minutes. I don't know if you know anything about that.
No.
You're looking with me with quite a puzzled face.
I never cut two versions. There was one version.
Okay.
So think I did a little trim after Caine. I'm wondering whether they got a TV version where they cut out all the violence. Or...
Yeah, I think it's like an American version, because for American sensibilities they cut down some of the violence. I think it's that the case. But I saw your cut. Don't worry, I saw your cut. No, I was just asking because I wanted to know if it was if you were involved, but I now know that you were not.
I was involved in the re-release here, but there was no cut down version. That's alarming.
But don't worry about that, because the main version, your version, this is like a supplement. It's not. It doesn't have the same attention. It's just a curiosity. Did the fact that the movie is quite revered today, that kind of reverence to the movie surprise you? Did you thought that the movie would stand so well after more than 40 years?
I never really think about it much. When that film came out here in Australia, nobody went to see it. The newspapers kicked the shit out of it. They were, at that time, anything with Aboriginals or Indigenous people it was anathema, and the violence. You know, the daily paper in my city in Melbourne came out, and the whole half of the front page, all of the second page, and half of the third page just slamming the movie for its violence and for, I don't know, Aboriginal stuff. And well, Pauline Kael, of course, gave it a rave review.
Yeah.
It was more appreciated, but you know, as Pauline Kael said in her review, which was a pity she did, she said, you know, it's steel yourself, because it's a very powerful film, so it kind of kept people away from it. It didn't get good distribution anywhere, and even people here, there was some weird jealousies here where people were going around, when we were in Caine, they were going around telling buyers that the film was a piece of crap and not genuine and all that. One of those people, I won't say who, was a fellow filmmaker, and I took him to task over it. But actually now he's one of the cheerleaders for the film. It's weird. Yeah, so no, it's weird is the answer to that.
But as a reward, the movie 40 years later is now more talked than it ever was. And just two more things. In 6 Degrees of Separation, there's a little joke, a recurrent joke about Sidney Poitier's directing a Cats movie, and now it turns out they're going to make a Cats movie. Did you ever thought that was going to happen someday? Or it was so far-fetched at the time that
That's right. It was more a comment on the quality of the musical than the possibility of being a film.
But now it's going to be made, and my God, it has a terrible look. But that's another story. I would like to finish this great conversation asking a simple question: is there a movie that you saw in your childhood or in your adolescence that made you think that you wanted to be a director?
Maybe in my adolescence. I think somewhere, because I was in advertising and I got involved, television came into existence, and at a quite young age I got involved in doing commercials and stuff, and experimenting with things.
Yeah.
But at around 15 I started going to what we used to call here continental cinemas, which there were 4 or 5 small cinemas in Melbourne that showed films from all over the world. I didn't go for the best intentions when I first went, because I knew the Swedish films would have naked women in it and I wanted to see them. And I found myself being transported to other worlds that I knew nothing about, being delighted by them, and more importantly, discovering myself in them, you know, like, oh, that's the same as us, and, you know, that sort of thing, you know, and psychologically. I just found them extraordinary. And then some other people who knew a lot about that stuff took me to see some very challenging ones, and you know, occasionally I saw a film I hated while I was watching it, but then I found, say, for weeks later, I would be rethinking it and thinking about it and rethinking it and talking to people about it and getting a whole new understanding of it. And all those things sank in. So somewhere around 20, I thought, you know, I could make that, I could do that. And I was, not long after that, I left advertising and got into a film company, which was a newsreel company. And I was doing a lot of industrial documentaries and things. And I thought the writing on them was so bad. And I thought, right, you just can't do this. And I thought, well, I could do better than this. I hadn't really thought of myself as writing, you know. I just thought, oh, I could do it better and I could have a lot of fun, you know. And that sort of got me starting writing, and they were great. I did mad musical concrete things, very experimental stuff. I used to make people who own knitting mills cry, because they'd go, "You're the only person who's ever seen beauty in what I do." So, you know, and a lot of that stuff that I was free to do in those things, you can't really do in narrative films. You kind of use some of it, but you've got to bury the more excessive pyrotechnics of what you can really do, because it doesn't serve the film you're doing. So anyway.
That's quite a story. And just to finish, just one more question. Is there any recent movie that you saw and you were mind blown by it? Is there any recent movie that made you that impression?
Yeah, you know, certainly around the time I was growing up, Swedish movies, Japanese movies in particular, you know who they are. Even one from Iran, a couple from Iran. Then the English started doing their kitchen sink movies, and anyway, it was a good period for cinema, and even Italy made good films in those days. And so, for instance, the Italian director who did The Young Pope, there's a series called The Young Pope.
Paolo Sorrentino.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying his work. I think it's like, oh, hello, the Italians are back, and he's got a particular. Oh well, he's got talents that he occasionally lets slip out. There is a series done in India called Delhi Crime, DEHLI Crime, 4-parter, phenomenal. The last 2 or 3 years in the films that have been up for, you know, Academy Foreign Film Awards, nearly every one of them has been fantastic. And in particular this year, Capernaum, I don't know whether you've seen that.
No, not yet, not yet.
Oh, get it. You know, like the film that won the Academy last year. Okay, it's pretty nice contemplation. But this film is extraordinary. And there's been a few of those over the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years, that have been inspiring. But not a lot out of America. Anyway, yeah.
But there are very good suggestions. I thank you very much for this conversation. I hope that you enjoyed it. For me, it was like a masterclass, a free masterclass that you gave me. And I wish I send you my best wishes, and I don't know if you're trying another project now, or if you I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying. But no, I had another one also before the Chinese one. I had spent 3 years on one with an extraordinary cast and set in Italy, and they just never raised enough money. So they kept trying to go ahead with it with the money they had, but you couldn't make the film that you needed to make. So it's been a little tricky.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to wish the best luck. I mean, you made such terrific movies, and I hope that you can make much more.
Thank you.